Hey everyone, so we hear this phrase all the time, right? AI learns. But what does that actually mean? I mean, what is an AI studying from to get so smart? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and take a look inside the AI's classroom.
And probably the best way to wrap your head around this whole thing is with a really simple analogy. Let's just think of an AI as a student. If that's the case, then the biggest question we have to ask is, what's its textbook?
Okay, so that textbook, the thing that holds all of an AI's knowledge, well, in the tech world, we call that a dataset. And trust me, it is the absolute foundation of everything we talk about when we say machine learning.
So what is a dataset? It's really not magic or anything complicated. At its core, it's just a big collection of information. Could be any information, really. The key is that it's all organized in a special way so a computer can look at it and start finding patterns. So, to make this even clearer, you can think of it a few ways. It's kind of like a giant notebook just stuffed with examples. Or you could see it as a huge digital library of information. But you know, my favorite way to think about it? It's like a practice workbook for the AI. You know, the kind with all the problems and the answers in the back, so it can just work through them over and over to learn. Okay, that all sounds good in theory, right? A workbook, a library, but what does one of these things actually look like? What is the AI student really seeing? Let's dive in and take a look.
All right, here's a super simple example. Let's say we want an AI to predict if a student is going to pass an exam. See this table? Each row, that's like one example. It's one student's whole story. And each column, that's just a different piece of information about them, how much they studied, their attendance, stuff like that. The AI's job is to look at thousands, maybe even millions of these rows to figure out the hidden patterns that connect, say, study habits to a passing grade.
But, and this is important, the AI's library isn't just a bunch of boring spreadsheets. Nope, data sets can be way more visual, way more complex than just simple rows and columns.
The same exact idea applies to tech you probably use every single day. Think about it. How would you teach an AI the difference between a cat and a dog? You can't just describe them, right? You have to show it. So in this case, the dataset becomes this huge collection of images. You feed it thousands of pictures that are correctly labeled cat and thousands more labeled dog. And from all that, the AI starts to learn the visual patterns all by itself.
All right, so the AI's got its textbook. But just like any student, you can't just read the book once and call it a day, right? There's a whole study cycle it has to go through to make sure it's actually learning the material. And this is basically its three-step study plan. First up, you have the training dataset. That's its main textbook, the core material. Then, once it's studied that, it moves on to the validation dataset. Think of these as the practice quizzes along the way. It helps the AI check its work and kind of fine-tune what it thinks it knows. And finally, when it's ready for the big day, it faces the testing dataset. This is the final exam. It's full of information it has never, ever seen before to prove it really, truly learned the subject. Now, we all remember this from school, right? The quality of your textbook makes a huge difference. A great book can make a super hard subject feel easy, while a bad one just leaves you totally confused. Well, for an AI, that idea is 1,000 times more important. So what actually makes for a 5-star textbook for an AI? Well, first, it's got to be large enough. You need tons and tons of examples. It also has to be clean and accurate, totally free of errors or typos. Then it needs to be diverse, covering all sorts of different situations, not just the easy ones. This next one is absolutely critical. It has to be properly labeled with all the right answers. And finally, of course, it needs to be up to date with relevant, modern information. And all of this leads us to what is maybe the single most important, most unbreakable rule in all of AI. You've probably heard it before: garbage in, garbage out. It's simple. If you feed an AI a low-quality, messy, or biased dataset, you are absolutely guaranteed to get a low-quality, messy, and incompetent AI on the other side. There are 0 exceptions to this rule. None. And believe me, these AI students are already out there in the real world, working jobs all around us. Think about self-driving cars. They are constantly studying massive datasets of road images to learn how to navigate safely. Or your voice assistant, Siri or Alexa. They were trained on just enormous audio datasets to understand what we're saying. And the chatbots that are blowing everyone's minds today, they've been trained on datasets of text that are literally bigger than any physical library on the entire planet. So, where does this all go from here? I mean, this field is moving so incredibly fast, and the very nature of an AI's education, the datasets themselves, is changing right along with it.
We're starting to see totally new kinds of textbooks pop up. Take synthetic datasets, for example. This is wild. We're now using one AI to generate perfect, clean, artificial data just to train a second AI. It's a way to get around the problem of messy real-world data. And at the same time, we have multimodal datasets. These are like these super advanced textbooks that combine text, images, and audio all into one package, teaching the AI to understand the world from multiple angles at once, kind of like how we humans do.
In all of this, it points to a huge shift in thinking, really. For years and years, the goal was always to make the students smarter, by tweaking the AI model, changing the code. But now, the entire industry is realizing that the biggest breakthroughs don't come from a smarter student. They come from a better textbook. This whole idea is called data-centric AI. It's this relentless focus on making the data set better. Because think about it, a brilliant student with a terrible textbook is going to fail. But even an average student can do amazing things with a perfect one.
So after all of that, what's the big takeaway? It all comes back to that simple idea we started with. A dataset is just a study book for a computer. That's it. It's that organized collection of examples that lets an AI find and learn the patterns of our world.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty critical thought. As these AI students get smarter and smarter, learning from the textbooks we give them, we really have to ask ourselves a very important question. Who gets to decide what goes into those books? Who gets to be the librarian for what might just be the future of intelligence?